Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. So I've been reluctant to venture into the topic of COVID restrictions, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Quebec's COVID restrictions because they're implementing a curfew of between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. Now, there's a whole bunch of exceptions to this, going to and from work. If your work is something that can operate when everyone is locked down in a curfew, picking up people from work, going to education, transportation of goods, medical attention, walking your dog within 1 kilometer of your home, which is a pretty narrow range. They've said that you can go into your backyard, but you can't go out onto the street to smoke, which, of course, is really nice if you've got a backyard, but lots of people don't. And that is very much a person of means kind of issue. That's do you have enough money to have a backyard? So this is really frustrating, especially because one of the things that's not identified as an exception is if you're homeless. So the homeless are somehow supposed to find housing between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. And they've said, oh, well, there's lots of shelter space, except that all of the shelter organizations have said, we're full to bursting, especially because they have reduced capacity because of COVID restrictions. So, they've said, oh, well, we're going to try not to arrest homeless people for being homeless, or we're going to try not to give them fines. Well, that entirely is putting things on police discretion. And in my experience, I don't have a whole lot of faith in police discretion because the police may use their discretion for somebody who's polite and nice and so forth, but somebody who's mentally ill and might be a little unpleasant to deal with, they might just say, you know what? No, you get the fine. They've also, there's these broad categories, but you're going to have to explain how you fit into these categories, which means that they've said basically you need to provide or you need to get from your employer like a work confirmation or a work authorization. And do they really think of the optics of that? You, sir, I need to see your papers from your boss that say you can be out at this hour. I'm just, I'm really concerned here, especially because when you stop and think about it, I don't know how this makes any sense. Coronavirus, I get, there's serious issues there, but I'm not really clear on how it's supposed to get more contagious past 8 p.m. I don't think that the virus actually owns a watch. What we've got here is instead we're told that the most important things are, protection in the sense of masks, isolation and distance, so being further away from people, and ideally not spending a whole lot of time in indoor spaces with other people. I can't see how this is going to help. In fact, I can see substantial reasons as to how this is going to hurt. The main thing, people are going to have to do that they just can't suspend is going food shopping. You got to eat. And right now, thinking of my local area, the food store is open till 11, which allows for a lot of people to go at spaced out hours. And if you're really concerned, you can aim to go during hours that are sort of less occupied. But for most people are going to work sort of the standard, if you're working 9 to 5, well, now you've got 3 hours in which you can go shopping. Do you think that maybe this is going to pack those stores much more than they would have been otherwise? People are going to end up lining up to go buy food because it's too full of people. I don't get this. And quite frankly, normally a curfew is something that you impose. If you're talking about the bail context, this is something you'd impose on people who are high risk. Like, it's not a starting point. It's not something you'd impose on somebody who's engaging in mischief or something. This is somebody who's going to be, this is something you'd put on somebody who's a real problem for society. And a curfew is sort of one of the last few steps for, is this person releasable even on strict conditions? But mostly, I think that we're going to see the impact of this on the poor and the homeless, both the poor because they're not going to have access to things like, being able to go out to smoke, and, the homeless because where else are they going to go? Like, what are they supposed to do? I don't buy the police are just going to use their discretion. And in fact, the Supreme Court has effectively rejected the discretion argument in the case of the Queen and Nur. And that was with respect to Crown prosecutors who are, expected to be very diligent and uphold the honor of the Crown. The court said, no, discretion is not suitable as a means of justifying something. I think it's even less so with the police, because the police are, they don't have the legal background. They don't have the same obligations. And so I just don't see it. But the other thing that I sort of want to rant about a little bit here, and I know I'm going to seem like a complete jerk, but I'm going to go ahead anyway. And that is this. So this is here in Alberta. We've got the province is granting an exception for a police officer who was killed. He was on duty. He was killed by somebody who was driving away and they ran him over. That person is, facing very serious charges. But the police have said, or the public health officials have said that there's an exception to the standard health rules. So they're going to have a funeral with 50 people. Now, I get that this is a tragic event. This is, horrible. But here's the thing. Every death is tragic to the people around them. There's plenty of people who've seen their parents, their grandparents, their spouses, people who mean the world to them pass on and who haven't been able to go to funerals or haven't been able to have the sort of funerals they'd like, with with all of the people who would normally be there at a funeral to pass things on. I remember, at my grandmother's funeral, it was meeting the people that she'd met and that she'd touched and that had never sort of had any, that I'd never had any contact with, but who were able to pass on stories that I was unfamiliar with, that sort of thing. And, this matters tremendously to a lot of people. Now we have these various health restrictions and we're told that they're very serious. So why is it that there are exceptions being made? Is your grandmother or your mother or your kid in some fashion, a lesser person, a lesser citizen than this officer? If these exceptions or if these rules are important, they should be being imposed without exception. Saying that we feel really bad about this. Well, does the virus become less contagious if we feel really bad about it? They've said, oh, well, the police are going to be following the restrictions very carefully, but that's not an exception available to anyone else. If you're not sort of top grade citizen, this exception isn't there for you. It's just, no matter how careful you're going to be. So I have real concerns about this. And this is the sort of thing that undermines public trust. It just, how do we trust these guidelines and these, restrictions if they're willing to make exceptions for people that are sort of on the top tier list? I think it's a real strike at public confidence. So I have some issues with this, notwithstanding the fact that I've got tremendous sympathy for the tragedy involved here. But when we say police are held to a higher standard, what that should mean is that police are held to the standard of being examples, that they are public role models for things like this. Not that they are, places where we're carving exceptions. This was an opportunity, if they want to say, hey, these things are meaningful, to say, listen, because of the public health issues, we're going to be doing this via, a webcast or something along those lines. I understand there is going to be a webcast that's closed off to officers. But still, I mean, this is something where they could have made a point of this. And instead, what they're doing is making a point of saying that maybe these restrictions aren't as important as, as we've been saying. And that's a concern to me. I don't like seeing two tiers of justice. I don't like seeing sort of special status. And that's what we're seeing here. So as much as I realize that I will probably come off as a tremendous, tremendous jerk, tremendously unsympathetic, I do have sympathy, but I also have sympathy for all of the other people who've lost loved ones who are going to see this and say, why not my mom? Why not my dad? Why not my kid? Why are we the ones that have to deal with this and, not this guy? Why? So anyway, that's kind of my, split rant here. I think that the Quebec, curfew is really hard to justify. I can't, see the public health rationale. It just seems like it's likely to backfire and that it's likely to harm a lot of people who maybe we shouldn't be, going after. I feel like whenever we're kicking the homeless, that kind of seems like maybe the wrong group to be targeting in society. So yeah, this is frustrating. And anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you found this to be, well, I'm not sure what to find this other than just, this is something that just perplexes me. And I don't know that I'm, the guy with the answers here. This is just one of the things where I think I can point to a problem rather than saying I know what the solution is. But anyway, that's, I guess, all I've got to say on that. Thank you to my Patreon supporters at the $50 level, Demo, Sir Daniel Wicks of Alberta, and Canada's National Firearms Association. At the $20 level, Cameron Johnson, Kevin Fleet, and Dale Nesbitt, as well as a number of people at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and cheers.